Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's a privilege to introduce Saskatchewan's Premier, the Honourable Brad Wall. On behalf of SUMA, the board, and our 450 urban government members, I want to extend our appreciation to the Premier for his participation this morning. SUMA has built an excellent working relationship with the Premier, his cabinet, and their ministries. We are pleased to partner with the provincial government to improve the quality of life and opportunities for the 82% of Saskatchewan people that live in urban areas. We appreciate this relationship we have built with the government, and that Premier Wall and members of the Cabinet take the time to attend convention and take your questions on Wednesday. Mr. Premier, you have said many times since our last convention that you're focused on growth in Saskatchewan, both the opportunities and challenges it offers. We see a parallel goal as we strive to make the most of the growth we see in our communities all over the province. We look forward to continuing a partnership to make Saskatchewan strong. Fellow delegates, please join me in extending a warm SUMA welcome to the leader of our dynamic province, our Premier, the Honourable Brad Wall.
Thanks very much, Alan. Hey, everybody. Oh, that's okay. Thank you. Thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for the chance to be here with you today. President Earl, members of the SUMA Executive, mayors and councillors, delegates, ministers of the Crown, and MLAs from both sides of the House, I would expect, that have joined us today. It is a privilege to be here again to talk a little bit about the future, talk a bit about the current budget upcoming, and also to acknowledge the leadership of our local governments in the province and to thank them for that leadership as well. I understand yesterday you had a session called How to Lobby Your MLA. I hope someone was taking notes and that you might send them to me. There's a few more of us now and we could always get better at that. I guess one of the points of advice from somebody who was at the session was that to you delegates was never embarrass the government. It's funny, that's what some of our veteran MLAs tell our rookie MLAs as well, and probably interested in those notes. Whether you are a mayor or a councillor or serving at a provincial level, I think it's also important that we are ready for all emergencies, all exigencies as they might present themselves, and so I don't see Mayor Fougere here just from this vantage point. There he is. Michael, you and I, we're going to, after this is done, we're going to go to Mosaic and we're going to check the breaker box. In the 1990s, I had a bit of a business, contracted myself out to organizations and did a number of different things, and one of them was selling memberships and working hard to try to develop the Southwest Tourism region. It had been the Horseshoe region, and there had been a reconstitution of these things, and I was hired, or my company was hired on a contract to go sell memberships. And one of the members of the board that hired me was a fellow by the name of Sam Boychuk. Sam was then the owner and proprietor of a place called the Commercial Hotel in Maple Creek, Saskatchewan, Canada. And so when I went to see him and visit him as a board member, he gave me the in-depth tour of that particular establishment. And this is an amazing place in our province. At front of this hotel remains today a hitching post. Inside that hotel, when I toured it, and I hope still, were Charlie Russell paintings, the famous cowboy artist Charlie Russell paintings. I think prints, but not prints. If they're originals, there should be locks on the door. Amazing artifacts and a marble floor, and it didn't take much of an imagination to picture cowboys coming into that place 128 years ago and horses tied up at the hitching post. It's really a spectacular place in our province and in a great community of Maple Creek. But as Mayor Rudd would tell you, the flood of 2010 took its toll on that particular establishment, and it's been quiet for a while, but quiet no longer. Late last year, I understand a company with 7 shareholders bought that hotel. Work is already underway to restore the Commercial to its former glory. The 7 shareholders, delegates to SUMA, are all Filipinos, recent immigrants to the town of Maple Creek. Profit, I'm sure, is part of their motivation. Yeah. profit or wealth creation or leaving something better for their kids. I'm sure that's part of the motivation, and so it should be, but part of their motivation was also that they wanted to give something back to their community. Here's what Noy Lim, the group spokesman, told the Maple Creek News on the purchase. Quote, "When we arrived here in Maple Creek, the town really welcomed us with huge smiles and embraced us. It's not always that you should be on the receiving end. You have to give something." Ladies and gentlemen, those among us who are lifetime residents of the province of Saskatchewan are served well when we hear the perspectives of those who have arrived anew. And if we look at our province through their eyes, I think we will see a province that today serves as a beacon of hope in a troubled world, just as it did 100 years ago. That might sound like hyperbole to some, but not to these 7 shareholders, and not to the thousands of newcomers who have agreed that this place is a place of hope and opportunity and have come. I know that's a concept that we're getting used to again in Saskatchewan. Something we're still coming to terms with. But that's how our province is now perceived by the thousands of immigrants and expatriates who've come back home over the last number of years. And all of you in this room, new councillors, new elected officials, and KG veteran elected officials, ought to be thanked for your leadership in creating that place, in restoring that hope and that opportunity to our great province. And on behalf of the province, I offer that thank you this morning. This is actually our first chance to visit since many of you have been either re-elected or elected for the first time. So I do want to congratulate everybody on their election. We are very fortunate in Saskatchewan to have strong local leadership. I was reminded of this in very clear and compelling ways just before Christmas when we had a chance to tour the BHP mine site. And then, because of the work of our MLA and former Melfort Mayor Kevin Phillips and Donna Harpower, we had a chance to meet with the mayors of towns of the city of Humboldt. Mayor Eaton was there, and the Reeves from surrounding RMs were there as well. We heard a lot about the challenges those communities are facing because of growth. Challenges they welcomed the growth, but challenges they needed to meet nonetheless. I just want to tell you this morning how impressed I was, and said so to Kevin and Donna as we left, and other government officials. I phoned the Minister, Jim Ryder, right after we met. How impressed I was with the willingness of the municipalities in that Humboldt area to work together, to turn their back on rivalries probably that stretch back 100 years and manifest themselves in hockey rinks every winter, to decide that notwithstanding the fact that their RM or their town or their city had different interests by definition, that their broader interests, their regional interests were more important, and the ratepayers they represented were first and foremost citizens of the province of Saskatchewan, of a new Saskatchewan that was growing, and so they were prepared to cooperate, to work regionally. I want to say this today before I get into the text of my remarks, and if this is a message, then so be it. I left there thinking if our government has some capacity in the future, some fiscal capacity to invest a little bit more to help those communities or help all of you deal with infrastructure challenges, and if there's a ranking of areas where that will receive that money, I think we're probably going to choose those regions that have demonstrated that big vision and that leadership first and foremost. And to the Humboldt city of Humboldt and area, and to other regions in the province, and I know there are others that are working together in this way, let me just say thank you. Let me encourage all of us to have the resolve, including our government, to recognize that that regional cooperation is the best way we can ensure that we do meet the challenges of growth and sustain growth on into the future. Thanks to projects like the Jansen Lake Mine, by the way, and companies like BHP, investment in our province has surpassed $20 billion last year. That's a brand new record. Today, investment continues to come into the province. New people are coming here to Saskatchewan. In the past year, our population grew at a rate we haven't seen in 90 years, since many of you were first elected here. I'm looking right at, there's Barry Gunther right in the front row. We have to do one gratuitous shot at Barry before. In the past 6 years, the province has grown by nearly 94,000 people. That's 2 Moose Jaws and 2 Swift Currents. Immigrants are coming here from 175 countries, settling in more than 345 communities, not just the cities, but rural areas, towns, and villages. There were close to 11,000 newcomers in 2012 alone. Immigrants are coming here. Expatriates are coming back. Why are they coming back? Well, we have a great quality of life to offer. You do a lot of that work. But first and foremost, there needs to be a job or a business opportunity or an investment opportunity. There needs to be economic opportunity. We're grateful to have the second lowest unemployment rate in the country with a record number of people working. We're happy to see that our employers are paying more. We've seen record growth in the average weekly earnings. And even today, if you checked out saskjobs.ca, there are 12,000 jobs that remain unfilled. We must never be complacent about this fundamental fact. While growth is not the end game for us, and more on that in a moment, that growth, the opportunity that's there, is the reason why we can have this debate about how we deal with the challenges of growth and where we're going to find the infrastructure to keep up with new people moving in, because that problem, ladies and gentlemen, I hope we all agree, is much more desirable than the problem of buying suitcases at graduation for our kids because they were going somewhere else to find a job. Growth is a great thing. It's not an end in itself. It's not the final step on this journey we're on to build better communities and a better province. You've heard me say it many, many times before. Growth is a means to an end. Growth expands our tax base. Then growth allows governments to invest more in highways. I think SARM says we're good now. We're done with roads and highways. We don't need to do anymore. No, they're not. There's no buns to throw here, Dave. It allows us to invest more in highways, more work's needed, more in education, more in healthcare, more in recreation, more in parks, in the quality of life, and a broader tax base and more robust revenues allows for strong revenue sharing with those who are on the front line of growth, the people that I'm looking at this morning. The President's already touched on this, but I'm going to repeat it. In the coming year, municipalities are expected to receive $264 million. That's up from $237 million this year in revenue sharing. That's more than an 11% increase year over year, and will be more than double what was paid out in 2007. More than double what was paid out in 2007. For Saskatoon, revenue sharing is up 137%. Regina, 133%. Moose Jaw, 124%. Prince Albert, 122%. La Ronge, 139%. Kindersley, 108%, just to name a few. We had a lot of catching up to do, though, didn't we, in terms of proper revenue sharing for the municipal sector. We readily recognized the fact that for a very long time, municipalities were going without in terms of proper revenue sharing. Still, there is no third party in this province, the government funds, that has received this kind of funding. That doubling in funding to municipalities has come at a time when the province's revenues have only increased by 44%. We're great, 44% is pretty good. But the revenue sharing principle, you remember, was predictability, and that your revenue sharing would grow with provincial revenues. Well, I'm happy to say, and I think you're happy, I know you are, from the ad, that the revenue sharing has grown by a much larger percentage than revenues to the province of Saskatchewan. At a time when post-secondary funding is up 37% in our first term, not an insignificant raise as well, again, over 100% in the municipal sector. By the way, in healthcare, when you combine the regions and the cancer agency, they're up 42% over the same time period. The system we have in place is based on a solemn commitment and a promise, and I think it's a recognition, it needs to be a recognition that you are on the front lines of growth, and there does need to be a sharing of revenue, and that's going to continue. It's not perfection, the formula, or even our relationship. the distribution formula, as you know, was up for review. The minister asked SUMA and SARM to come together and hammer out a consensus, a compromise on changes to the distribution formula.